we're going to begin by doing a recap of the first sign of Yahushua. Now, as a recap of the first sign, you know, Yah turned 6 stone water pots full of water used for purification into wine. Now, the 6 represents man as well as works. The stone or rock water pots typify Elohim, the rock of Israel. Put together, the 6 water pots typified Elohim, the rock of Israel, as a man doing a work in the earth. This work was to purify mankind as well as his works. Prior to this, purification was of the water of the word, which is to say Torah, the teachings and instructions of Elohim, in conjunction with the customs of the elders that were passed down throughout the generations of Israel, such as we seen in Mark 7, dealing with the washings of hands and things of that order. Now, in that the water typified Torah, the filling of the water pots typify the repletion of Torah. That is, filling it up to the brim, you know, putting therein what was lacking. For Torah taught one how to have a prosperous life here on earth, but it didn't teach one how to have eternal life with Yah. The teachings of Yahushua, our Messiah, Redeemer, and King, does contain those things. And that's what he filled Torah up with. That's what he repleted Torah up with. Now, after the work or instructions of Yahushua has been done, these same stone water pots now typify the life of the rock, that is Yahushua Elohim as a man in the earth, who now offers purification for man and his works via his purifying blood, which we know was done through his death, burial, and resurrection. Hence, we see his servants dipping the wine, or you could say blood, of Yahushua as a depiction of Yah's love poured out for all peoples, nations, and tongues, that they might be purified. You know, this is a beautiful picture of the work of our Messiah. That being said, the whole earthly marriage ceremony of that day is a type of the coming heavenly marriage supper of the Lamb. This is why Yahushua would say, my hour had not come. You know, but even though his hour had not come, he still was obedient to his mother and still helped the people out. And that was out of love. During which time, you know, the time of the supper of the Lamb, during that time, this wonderful wine served during the earthly marriage, made up of Yahushua's love for us, will run short and will be replaced with the wine or wrath of Elohim poured out without measure when he descends upon the earth, as depicted in Revelation 19. You know, I just wanted to do a recap of that, just to clarify what I was saying last week, in case it wasn't clear to anyone, because no one asked any questions, and, you know, I thought it could be clearer myself. So I pray that this helps. All right. That being said, we'll pick it up with Yochanan 2:12, which says, after this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. Now, this word after is meta in the Greek, number 3326. Its primary meaning is mid, amid, in the midst, with, among, implying accompaniment. Yeah, that's like a tongue twister for me. Accompaniment. All right, anyway. Being with. All right. Now, what I want to point out is that this isn't the only word for afterwards in the Greek language. You know, they have another word that could have been used that means just totally after something done, coming after something or behind something. You know, but the Ruach chose this word, and I believe the reason why is because this next course of events is to accompany the Simeon or sign that preceded it, you know, as we interpret the scriptures. Now, it says he went down. This word down literally means to descend to Capernaum. And if you continue on with the theme of the sign, the Simeon, the first sign that he done, which was a picture of the marriage supper of the Lamb. When you read in Revelation 19, it speaks of Yahushua gathering his troops and getting ready to descend upon the earth. Now, where did he descend to? Even Capernaum. Capernaum means city of Nahum. And the name Nahum in itself means comfort. Now, this is a remez, but a hint, if you would, but not so that we can look to the comfort of Nahum, but more so of the prophecy of Nahum. See, Nahum prophesied the destruction of Nineveh. Matter of fact, that's all his prophecy speaks of. It just speaks of Nineveh. You know, this is the city of Nahum that Yah had him prophesy about. You can tell from this first couple verses, which says the Nahum 1 and 2, the burden of Nineveh, the book of vision of Nahum, that Eckloshite. We know it wasn't talking about the city where he was from, Eckloshite, because when you try to research the city from where that makes a person an Eckloshite, they don't even know the real name of it. You know, but they call, some people say Eklosh, and some people say it was some other city. They really don't know. It's really debatable. They can't nail this one down. You know, likewise with Capernaum in and of itself. You know, but the one that we can nail down for a certainty is Nineveh. And we've spoken about Nineveh before, but as we take a look, it says the burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Eckloshite, Elohim is jealous, and Yahuwah revengeth. Yahuwah revengeth and is furious. Yahuwah will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. So the book of Nahum is all about Yah pouring his wrath out on Nineveh. Nineveh is a type of Babylon, which is a type of the Babylon the Great that we read about in Revelation. Revelation 17 and 18 and even 19, where it speaks about, you know, how great the fall of Babylon is, you know, that great city. You know, and when you read about Babylon in Revelation 17, you'll see it was a city of comfort, so to speak. You know, they had all the comforts of the world. You know, it was drop dead gorgeous. So much so that Yochanan, who was getting the prophecy, it said that he marveled at it. You know, and the angel that was showing them, you know, had to bring them back to earth. Why do you marvel? You know, that's how awesome it was. You know, but point being, this is a type of Babylon. And what's been pointed out here is the destruction thereof. Nahum's entire message announced and celebrated Yah's destruction of Nineveh. That is the outpouring of his wrath. And in case you're wondering, Nahum came after Jonah. So after Yah spared it, you know, he would later come again and destroy it. You know, hence, you know, you read concerning Capernaum, Matthew 11:23, Yahushua says, "And thou, Capernaum, which are exalted unto heaven, shall be brought down to hell. For if the mighty works which have been done in thee had been done in Sodom, it would have remained unto this day." You know, so we see that this city was also accursed, you know, to be destroyed. And they destroyed it so much so that don't nobody even really know where Capernaum was now today. You know, so this prophecy truly did come to pass. But in the scheme of things, Yah is showing how during the marriage supper of the Lamb, he would descend upon that city of comfort. This would be Babylon, and he will pour his wrath out upon him. I'm going to take a look at this account. I remember my first read Revelations 18:4-5 and 16 through 20.
And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, come out of her, my people, that ye may be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Elohim hath remembered her iniquities. And saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen, and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold, and precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships, and sailors, and as many as trade by sea stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is this like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, the great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Elohim hath avenged you on her.
Okay, so we see here, that this coming mystery Babylon city, they're going to be associated with merchandise, for one. Because we see it says, speaking of every shipmaster and all the company of ships and sailors, as many as trade by sea stood afire. And it speaks about, them merchandising. Here it is. This city will be ruling over the world. And that's what this is being alluded to by Yah descending to Capernaum, because we speak of the hour of Yahushua. This was the hour of Yahushua when he came down and avenged this city on all the saints that were martyred, even as he did. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Elohim have avenged you on her. In 1 hour she is made desolate. In accompaniment with the marriage supper of the Lamb, Babylon will be destroyed. Just as depicted here in Yochanan, if you have eyes to see. So I wanted to put this in there so you can see the latter end of the prophecy is entailed right here. And let's see what the next verse says. Yochanan 2:13. And it says, And the Yahudam Pesach was at hand, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem. Now, actually, this word up actually means to ascend. It literally means to ascend. Now, in conjunction with the Simeon or sign of Yahushua will come with the destruction, which comes with the destruction of the whore, the beast, and the false prophet. What follows that is the white throne judgment, which will begin with the temple of Elohim. For judgment begins with the house of Elohim. Now, again, this is the next step, and we see this right here in Yochanan, but when we refer back to Revelation, it shows the next step is the white throne judgment, in which Yahushua will ascend into New Jerusalem, sit on this throne and judge the people, And speaking to judgment begins with the house of Elohim, we have 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 13 through 18. My next reader, please.
Rejoice, inasmuch as ye have partaken of Messiah. Rejoice, but rejoice, inasmuch as ye have partaken of Messiah's suffering, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also, exceedingly joy. If ye be reproached for the name of Messiah, happy are you. For the Spirit of glory and Elohim reside upon you. On their part is his evil spoken of, but on your part he endured it. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's business matters. matters. But for the time is come that judgment shall begin at the house of Elohim. And if the first began at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of Elohim? And if the righteous secretly be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinners appear?
Okay. Now, here we see that judgment must begin at the house of Elohim.
Yes.
Now, one of the primary reasons that Yah pours his wrath out, as we seen depicted in the previous stretch of verses that we read, is because he wants to take vengeance for his apostles and for those who were martyred for Yahushua's namesake. Okay, for those who suffered because of Elohim, he's taking vengeance on their behalf. These are the ones that you read about that's up under the altar that's saying, how long?
Yes.
How long, Yah, until you take vengeance on us? And he tells them, yet a little while longer until the number of you be filled, of those who have to be martyred in like manner as ye were. This is all taking place during this time with the mark of the beast and all this, when this number will be filled up. When folks that suffered